sir, starting with the conversation, just tell us about yourself, your professional journey till now.
Well, my professional journey has been interesting. Right now, I'm in Kyrgyzstan. I'm in a place called Naran, which is a small little town in the middle of the mountains. And I'm here to help the University of Central Asia set up their center of entrepreneurship in Naran. Right. So I go wherever I can find an entrepreneur, right? Wherever I can find a young person, and I can tell him, don't bother with a degree, get up and running, right, and start doing things. So my career started with the army, right? I wanted to be a nuclear physicist, but when my father didn't let me go to MIT, so I rebelled and I said, okay, I'm going to go join the army. So I went and joined the army, right? And once I was inside the gate of PMA, I realized I've done the wrong thing, right? So it took me about 3.5 years to get out of there. I graduated from the PMA Kakul. I was commissioned as an officer. I went into an armored corps unit. I served with distinction. I topped every course I went to. But then I felt, that I could do more outside. So I left the army and I resigned my commission. I then came back to Lahore, and just about a week into coming back in Lahore, I guess my reputation had preceded me. And Dawn newspaper uh, offered me a job. So a friend of mine was getting married in Karachi, and they were offering me a free ticket to go to Karachi. So I said, okay, I'll go take the interview. So I was interviewed by Hamid Harun, and I was offered the job. So I joined the Dawn newspaper, January 1983, and I left them in February 1983 after 1 month because I had got three offers from three different advertising agencies in that 1 month. So I just left and I joined the first one that I liked the name of. It was called Sasa. It was one of the top five agencies at the time. I joined as an internee, right, at the very junior level. In 6 months, I had become a manager because I could do things really fast. At the same time, I enrolled at the IBA thinking I might need a degree. After one semester, I realized I don't. So I went back to working, right, 14 hours a day, and I progressed and I moved really fast. So from SASA, in about a year, no, less than a year, I went into a very senior position as a creative director to another agency called Paragon. Right, from Paragon, I was introduced to Exxon Chemicals, which is now Engro, and I was handling the account. So 3 months later, they offered me to join Exxon, which is at that time the largest corporation in the world. So I wasn't keen, but the owner of Paragon was afraid that if I don't join, they might take the account away. So he said, no, go join. And if you ever want to come back, you can always come back. So I went and joined Exxon. Right, it was, like I said, the biggest corporation at that time. Asad Umar had joined at the same time. Asad Umar was in planning, right, and I was the advertising and sales promotion person. They liked me, right. So after about 8 months, when I realized that this is too slow a track for me, and I resigned. So my supervisor called me and said, "What's the problem? Why do you want to leave?" And I said, "It's too slow for me." Right. So you're a front product company, just sell urea. So I have more ambitions in life. So I went back to advertising. And then I was, 6 months into going back to Paragon, I was offered uh, a deal by Tahir Khan of Interflow. Him and his wife had started Interflow. They wanted somebody to come in with them. I went in and I became a partner in Interflow. Right. So in about a year and a half, I'd gone from a trainee to becoming a partner in a very large agency.
That is
So I was in a hurry. Right. I know. I was in a hurry, and I was willing to take risk. Right. Every move I made was obviously fraught with risk. There was risk element. वो किया उसके बाद I've been self learning. Right. So when I was interviewed by I continued in advertising. I did really well. उसके बाद जो है ना from I moved on fast, and then in 19 so this is around 85 when I joined Interflow as a partner, and we grew really fast. Right, we were one of the fastest growing agencies at that time. Every client, every account that we wanted, we would win because I think we made a very good team. But by 1990, I hated clients. These brand managers, they're always trying to tell you what to do without themselves knowing what they want. right? So most of the multinational brand managers, they just follow one track, right? They
Yeah.
get, they get a Brazilian commercial and they say make the same
Right.
for Pakistan. They get a commercial from Indonesia and they say make the same for Pakistan. They get one from India, make the same for Pakistan. That didn't excite me. I wanted to create content. So we got the opportunity to launch a TV channel. So NTM was launched, and
Right.
I got involved with NTM. Setting up the first three stations: Islamabad, then Karachi, then Lahore. Right. This is now around what 1990, right, when we got the license and all that. And then in '91, I went to England for a vacation with my family, and I met some people there who said, we want to set up a satellite TV station for South Asians,
Right.
for Pakistanis, Indians, Bangladeshis, Sri Lankans. The idea appealed to me. It was a risk, it was a challenge. So I decided to do it. In Interflow, we had done a very big campaign for SAF Games. So the three partners, we had got some dividends. So I had about $20,000.
Right.
Right. So I decided to launch a satellite TV station with that. Right. And you say, well, you can't launch a CCTV station, a closed circuit TV station with that. And I said, no, I'm going to do it.
Right.
So because I had the NTM at the back, so I knew that I'd get some programming from NTM. And I found some partners in the UK who were from India, right? And that's how we developed TV Asia. And we started on a cable system. And then, it took us about almost near about 7, 8 months to get on satellite. Satellite at that time was very expensive.
Yeah.
One satellite transponder, which meant one channel, was around £4 million, 4.2
Oh,
million pounds. So we needed to raise a lot of money. I started with $20,000. So eventually we raised $11.7 million. That's the kind of money that is required. But by that time, we were diluted. Tyre and myself, I was managing that. Our dilution was such that we exited. So we went in with about $35,000 and we came out with about $250,000. So it was a good exit if one looks at the exit. So that was my first kind of real brush with building something which was sizable, right? Even today, TV Asia continues as ZTV because ZTV came and bought it, right?
yeah.
So I remember when I met Apex Partners.
Mhm.
Apex Partners was one of those big West End funds, and they
Mhm.
were $100 million fund. Now they're $1 billion fund. So when I was in their boardroom and talking to them and trying to convince them, so when I showed the numbers, right, because we were pay television, so
Right.
when I showed the numbers of revenue in the third year, so one of the partners asked me, he said, "Is that a telephone number?" Because it was 7 digits.
Yeah. Oh my
And I said, "No, it's the revenue in the third year."
God.
So, and it actually did hit that revenue number in the not in the third year, in the fifth year, right?
Right.
So that was my kind of relationship with and from there I've continued.
Mhm.
I came back, ran NTM again, then I went out back again to the US. I went back to the UK. Now I started doing new media and telephony. So I joined one company. I helped them establish communities. Then I moved on into Hutchison. They were headhunting, so they took me, and it was again about content. So my whole thing became creative content, right? Creating content for different target communities, different target segments, and all that. And I fell in love with the telephone. Right? This is as far back as 2002, because a company like Hutchison had research worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So you could see what was going to happen in 10 years. Right? The
Mhm.
iPhone was still 5 years away, but they
Yeah.
knew the iPhone was coming. At that time, you had those PDAs, personal digital assistants, and you could, carry a lot of content on that. You had no streaming, you had none of those things, but you could download and you could carry it with you. So I
Yeah.
used to carry the iPad with me as a symbol of the future. Right? I was asked to come back by the young group by Mir Shakil. He met me in 2002 and he said, हम टीवी चैनल लॉन्च कर रहे हैं. I said, मुबारक हो आपको. मैं इंटरेस्टेड नहीं हूँ टीवी चैनल में. तो he said, क्यों इंटरेस्टेड नहीं है टीवी आपको नहीं इंटरेस्ट करता. मैंने कहा जी नो मोर, कर
Uh,
चुका हूँ. ठीक है ना, पे टेलीविजन भी कर चुका हूँ, फ्री टू एयर टेलीविजन भी कर चुका हूँ. उसने कहा फिर आप क्या सोच रहे हैं. मैं आई टुक आउट माय आईपैड एंड आई सेड मैं ये सोच रहा हूँ. दिस इज द फ्यूचर. अच्छा ये क्या है. सो आई शोड हिम. I had some videos on it, so I showed. ये तो कमाल की चीज है. तो आप वापस आए. So I came back to Pakistan on the understanding that I will develop geo networks, direct to home distribution channels. right?
Right.
That was the agreement with me. I came back. I joined Geo in 2003. So the first thing he asked me to do was, अब पहले तो आप ऐसे करें कि जियो को जो है ना दुनिया में फैला दें,
Uh-huh.
right? So I said, अच्छा ठीक है, दुनिया में फैला देते हैं. So we launched in the US, we launched in the UK, we launched in Asia Pacific, we launched in the Middle East, and I traveled only twice doing all this, right? Only twice. I used to do everything from my laptop sitting in Karachi. They used to be very fascinated.
Yeah.
ये आप कैसे कर लेते हैं? I said the world is very connected. Means
Yeah.
I don't need to travel every time. I have to have a meeting. So I was doing remote meetings at that time in the sense, emails and messenger and exchanges. That kind of was where I wanted to lead to. I wanted to be a distribution player, get into telephony. I did do a lot of things with the Geo network on telephony, right? With the local networks, with Jazz with Mobilink at that time. Then came Jazz with Wared, all these networks. And I realized that you need to have access to your customer, not go through them, right? Because they say, oh, the customer is mine. No, it's not. My content, my customer, right?
Yeah.
So I started to look at OTT. We said over the networks, beyond the networks, and not dependent on the network, right? So I did a lot of that, developed the digital side of Jung. Also, it took me about 1 year max
Mm.
for establishing the Geo network internationally. And I hired a young guy, and I handed everything over to him. Right? So I threw him in at the deep end, and I said, when you start to drown, just give me a shout, and I'll come and help you out. He's there today, and he's still heading the international. He sits in London. He lives in London,
Right.
and he's one of the he's one of the most prized managers that they have today because he was young, he was unafraid, he wanted to do things, right? And he's done a lot of those things. So I've always worked with younger people, right, in a way, trying to find my own succession. So that has been a very interesting part of the journey. Yeah.
So thank you so
I
much.
left the jump group in 2015 because I realized that they
Mhm.
will not do anything. 2012, 2013, I started going to Plan 9, taking workshops, meeting young startups. Three of them I'd identified. I took
Mhm.
them back and I realized that they don't have the appetite. When I took book me back, so Mir Ibrahim said, why are you not talking to Ticketmaster? Well,
Right.
Ticketmaster is not here. Book me is here. Right? So
Mhm.
why should I talk to Ticketmaster that's not here when Book Me is here? That kind of thing. So three companies I had identified, they were not interested. So I quit Jung Group and I became an angel and I started investing in small startups, small amounts of money. I didn't have too much. I only had my life savings. So I gambled those. Seven investments, in fact, eight now. And out of those, four have folded, which happens, but four of them
Right.
have grown and they have potential to grow more. That's it.
So that's really great. Sounds interesting. Now let's just discuss about some kind of entrepreneurship. Like you have helped set up and manage multiple incubation centers, and I've seen so many people approach you with the plan to become an entrepreneur. What we would like to
Yeah.
ask you is that what actually is entrepreneurship? Like, can anyone become an entrepreneur, or there are certain attributes, key attributes for a person to have to become a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah, people can become businessmen, but entrepreneurs are rare, right? An entrepreneur is actually somebody who has very deep empathy. They have to have, if you were to distill, right, entrepreneurship into one word, it is empathy. Entrepreneurs see a problem, right? They see a pain point and they say, I'm going to solve this pain. And out of that solution comes a business. So the first thing they look at is the problem. They do not look at and saying, this is going to be, I'm going to make $1 billion out of this. They say, I'm going to solve this problem. At times, the problem is their own. It may be something that they've experienced themselves, right? Travis Kalanick, right, the Uber founder,
Yeah.
right? His entire pitch was many times I wanted to go to a meeting and I had to come down, I had to stand on the street, wait for a taxi. I would get late or I would get, it would rain, I'd get drenched. So I decided to solve that. So here is a button on your phone, you press that, and a car turns up when you want it, right? As simple as that. That is the value proposition. And the other side of it was 80%, 90% of the time, your car is just standing there. It's dead investment, right? So why do you carry dead investment? Why don't you make it work for you? right? So why don't you make sure that the hours that you're not using, it can still be used? And
Mm-hmm.
at times you have a few hours and you can use those. You can switch on the app and you can drive for others. So it's about finding a problem that you want to solve, and you have to have the skill and the knowledge to solve that problem, right? That's where we talk about domain expertise. And I mean, like Zishan, right? So when he was at the LCE, and we would talk about, what problem are you trying to solve? And it's
Mm-hmm.
about kids out of school. It is about education. It is
Right.
about the education emergency. It's about 25 million kids not even having access to school, right? Or the schools that are there not having the quality. So he was developing a solution for that, and his whole focus was, I want to reach 1 million kids in 3 years. Right? At times there are barriers. School systems are very closed. The government public school system is closed to entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They don't open their doors to entrepreneurs. Right?
Right.
So you have to find a solution. So he's found that solution, where now he's offering skills,
Yeah.
right, which are what you call employable skills. So
Mm-hmm.
suddenly, I can do a short course with Grassroots,
Yeah.
and I can become a freelancer, or I can become employable immediately, right? So you're solving a problem. That is the key thing to an entrepreneur. You've got to be resilient. You have to stay. Look at Zishan. He has stayed at it. It's now what, almost 5 years,
Yeah.
right? That he had quit his job. He was in the corporate sector. He quit his job. He took a big risk. He has a family to feed, but he has stayed at it and said, "I'm going to do this. I'm going to solve this problem, right? Or I'm going to solve part of this problem, right?" So that's what he's doing. So that is what an entrepreneur is. They have to have resilience. They have to have belief, right, in what they're doing. I don't use the word passion, because passion means you do something without being paid for it, right, without having any compensation for it.
Yeah.
But belief and, that confidence that you can solve that problem, that is a critical part of it.
Exactly. So my next question to
And
you
anybody
is,
can, right, at
yeah.
different levels.
So next question my is, what are some of the key challenges startups have traditionally faced in setting up and growing their business, and how can one overcome those challenges?
So there are different environments, right, in which different businesses or different, let's say, entrepreneurs function. I'm in a place right now which is 50,000 people only, right? Kyrgyzstan, the total population is 6 million. Lahore is 12 million. A city is 12 million,
Yeah.
right? And over here, obviously, when you have a very large country which is very mountainous, 94% is mountains. So
Mm-hmm.
you'll have mountain communities, which means you will have small businesses. You'll have to start with a small business, largely agri, livestock, right? That kind of thing. So you're not
Yeah.
going to come with big, high end solutions, right? You
Right.
have to look at it from ground level. A
Right.
similar thing would happen in Gilgit Baltistan. Similar thing would happen, in the remote areas of South Punjab. Right? I've
Mm-hmm.
been to the remote areas of South Punjab also. I've been to Gilgit Baltistan also. When I come back, right, in August, I'm going again to Gilgit to train a cohort of women entrepreneurs. So I
Right.
have to be conscious of what their environment is. What is it that they can do? What kind of a market can they create around themselves? You can hope and wish that the Gulmeet carpet factory will sell to the world, but the reality is that they may not be able to, right?
Exactly.
Because people may want to touch the carpet before they want to buy it. That kind of thing. So you have to look at the environment and say, what does this environment allow me to do? Right? What kind of an ecosystem is there to support whatever I want to do? So at times, this regulatory environment. I
Right.
remember one startup at LCE in Lums, and they were doing what Airbnb does. And
Uh-huh.
we actually stopped them and said, "But you can't do it. Regulations don't allow me to turn my home into a guest house on a weekend. I can't just take a guest in on the weekend." But Uber and Airbnb is here, and people are booking rooms in their homes, right? So the environment changes also. A lot of companies, if you look at Pakistan, where is the most of the money going in? Is going into the last mile, right? Which may be transportation, which may
Yeah.
be delivery. Food delivery is very big,
Yeah.
right? Now groceries and medicines and all that. So that's the last mile, right? Last mile is a very challenging place, right? Every kind of last mile, even in television, there is a last mile. The
Mm-hmm.
last mile is how the signal gets to your television, right? Is it a cable that's coming in? Is it DTH, direct to home from satellite, right? That is the last mile. So you see that in that context. So rest of the money, a lot of the money is now going into retail, right? So, digitizing the chain, the value chain, digitizing from manufacturer to distributor to retailer, right? That chain is being digitized
Yeah.
because it was inefficient. There are close to about a million retailers,
Mm.
right? Most of them, bulk of them, 60, 70%, are very small Karyana stores,
Yeah.
right? So at times they were underserved. At times no distribution would reach them, right? So you have to expand that distribution. You want more product on the shelves.
Mm.
It's around about $170 billion market in Pakistan, right? The connection between wholesale, manufacturer, distributor, and retail, right? So that's where money is going in. So one of the challenges, key challenges for local entrepreneurs, for Pakistani entrepreneurs, is their exposure, right? The ones who are getting the money are the ones who went to universities abroad. They have connections, they have family connections, they've networked abroad, right? Tajir, they first
Yeah.
applied to Y Combinator, they got in there, right? They got a measly what $125,000, but they got endorsement, right? They got the stamp of approval. Now they've raised $20 million, $17 million in one go, right? And Y Combinator Venture Fund is also one of those companies that is invested in them. So, it's about the network, it's about exposure, it's about relationships
Mm.
and all that. So, we're trying to change things. I work with the Prime Minister's program
Mm.
of Kamyab Jawan,
Yeah.
and we've now been able to create a tier, first tier, which is up to 500,000, and that is non collateralized, no interest loans.
Right.
So, a lot of times, a small startup, 500,000 rupees is all it needs to get to the next stage, to create an MVP, right? So, or for a micro entrepreneur to start a business. Kitchen cuisine started as a micro business. Gourmet started as a micro business, right? So, a lot of micro businesses start with very little capital and they can build from there. Next year, we have is up to 2 million. Again, 2 million is non collateralized, no security. The problem was the banks. The banks have never lent that amount of money, right?
Right.
500,000, 800,000, no collateral. So they're just not used to it. So we've had to push them. First, there were three banks, now there are 21 banks. Next year is 25 million, right? So 25 million is like seed or pre-seed capital that you would normally get.
Yeah.
And then you have 50 million, right? So 25 million, 50 million need collateral.
Yeah.
I'm now talking to them and saying for tech startups, you have to rethink this because they won't have collateral. They won't have building, they won't have machinery. They may just have five laptops or three laptops, and
Yeah.
that's it. Or they may have three smartphones, and that's it, right? So you have to rethink that. I'm mentioning debt because it is better than equity because debt means you get your business up and running, you pay it off, and
Yeah.
then your entire equity is yours. When you go out and you raise money against equity, right, you're putting a monkey on your shoulder who's always going to be there telling you what to do,
Yeah.
right? Whispering in your ear, tugging your ear, and saying you're doing this wrong. You need to do this. You need to report to me. I
Yeah.
need to see, monthly reports. I want to see a. I want to have a quarterly board meeting. All those things, which are
Yeah.
not bad things. They're good governance things. But you need to have good governance yourself. Successful entrepreneurs are very good at running their company. It's not just about their solution. It's about how they execute the solution. That is the critical part. So most investors will look at the founders and try to determine, can this person or can this team of people actually execute this business, right? Because when you're doing projections, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars.
Mm.
And how many customers you have right now? 50. How much revenue do you have right now? $500. And you're talking about $150 million in the third year. So they need to believe that you can actually do it. The market may have the potential, but you need to be able to convince them that you're the right people to be able to do it.
Exactly.
Right? So I'm part of a tech start of an ed tech startup, education tech.
Okay.
Uh, we started putting it together in around July. We did 1 year of research before that. Then we started putting it together in July, writing the scripts and all that. In around September, we started to make the first video. In February, we had raised $75,000. We only had 50 customers at that point. Most businesses do not fail because they don't have money. They fail because they don't have the right product. They have not identified the right customer. So the product market fit that is required, right? You fail because you don't have product market fit, not because you don't have money, right? You can do with very little money. You can bootstrap, right? We bootstrap. The three founders of Senpai, we would put in 50,000 every month. So
Mm.
the only capital we had was 150,000 to be able to put that in, because we were all working also. So we were earning a bit of money and putting it in. None of us was full time. Right now we say, okay, when we raise the money, the investor is going to say, right? So we're talking to a couple of VCs. So they are going to say, well, you got to do this full time. You can't do this part time. Absolutely. Pay me for my time and I will do it full time. And why should I not be paid as a founder? So a lot of founders make the mistake that they start part time, but they need to have a path to convince that we will be full time, or you start full time. If you can take that plunge and take that risk, then start full time.
Sir, very well said that we need path to start something and kick it off, right? My next question is just concerned with the overall Pakistan thing. Like, what role is the government actually playing to enable entrepreneurship in Pakistan? Like, we have seen before, the ecosystem was like traditional. You told about the finances thing. There were only three banks. Now, what do you think? Government is playing a better role, or we are going somewhere the betterment of Pakistan in terms of entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So, basically, entrepreneurs need an environment. They need a minimum viable environment, right? So, what does that let's say, viable environment mean? A regulatory environment, right? Ease of
Yeah,
doing business. If I still have a big problem opening a bank account for a private limited company, that is a no-no, right? So that has to be sorted. SCP is doing some stuff. Then, creating space for young companies on the stock exchange. Why should I go to individuals or to VCs to raise money? Why can't I go to public and raise money? So they've
exactly.
now created that tier, right, where smaller companies can also go and they can list on the stock exchange. So some things have been done, but more things need to be done. What happens is bureaucrats, they look around and say, okay, who's making money? Aha, e-commerce is growing. It's now $4 billion. Tax
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
So suddenly you have taxes on marketplaces. A,
right.
a marketplace has 10,000 vendors, right? How many vendors does Daraz have? How do I know as Daraz which one of them is charging sales tax and which one of them is paying sales tax? So sometimes they just do things without even thinking of the implications, of what will be the implications. Now, I know the
Yeah,
people in the government who have thought like that. They've been there before also. They've just come back again, right? And they've done the same thing, right? They say, oh, freelancers are making a lot of money, so we need to tax freelancers. So freelancers are bringing, dollars. $2 billion has come in to
yeah,
Pakistan in software exports, and it's not all software export. It is actually services which are being exported,
exactly.
right? So, we need, so constantly we have to push with the government and say, listen, you need to look at it like this way. You need to let companies develop. Logistics is still a big problem. Transactions are a big problem, right? Still 95% cash on delivery, which means I don't get my money at the time the customer gets the product. The customer has got the product, but I haven't received the money because the courier has collected money. And then they're going to sit on it for 10 days. So my cash flow gets affected. So we've been pushing with the government. We'll keep pushing and say you need to solve this. You need to make sure that maybe the post office becomes uh, more technically advanced and can do, because China Post does that for China,
Yeah,
right? So some of these things need to happen.
right. Sir, lastly, any advice or any suggestion to the young entrepreneurs who are just trying to set up something in Pakistan, keeping in view the overall environment?
Look, there is huge opportunity. Pakistan is a market of 220 million. When you tell somebody 220 million, they say,
Yeah,
wow, right? Even if we apply the Pareto's law, which is 20-80, and say, okay, 80% of them cannot afford all the services, but 20% can. 20% means 44 million, right? Most
exactly.
European countries don't have that population. So there is a lot of opportunity. You have to find the right thing. You have to find the right problem, right? So there is Uber and Kareem, right? Or there is Food Panda, and there is Cheetah and all that. Uh, but then there is little Batur, in Swabi and Mardan, who's also making home deliveries,
Yeah.
right? So in their market, they're kings, right? There is no Kareem Uber there making deliveries or Baikia there,
Yeah.
right? So there is a niche. Dominate the niche. Find your niche. First, dominate that niche. Become a big player in that niche,
Yeah.
and then you can always expand. There is Darivaru in Peshawar, right? Which is again a delivery company, right? They found a niche. They dominate Peshawar. Now they can go to any other market. So find that problem that you can solve, right? Don't fall in love with your idea. Your idea means nothing if it doesn't solve a problem, right? And a real problem. So
Right.
Sequoia Capital describes it as find somebody with their hair on fire, and
Mm.
you're the only one who can put it out. That's the kind of problem to find. Somebody's hair is on fire, and you're the only one who can put it out. So
Right.
that is, and you can do it at any level,
Mm.
right? You can do it at any level. Never make the excuse, oh, I don't have money, right? I've done it in so many places. Chitral, we did, when we selected a cohort of
Mm.
41 there in January, we
Mm.
went for in January, we had selected before. So out of 380 people, 99% said our biggest problem is money, right? When we asked and said, what's your biggest problem? And they
Yeah.
said money. Then we did the design thinking workshop with them, problem discovery, and money was not in the top five clusters. Their top cluster was actually roads, access,
Mm.
people coming to Chitral. That is the opportunity for them, right? If they come to Chitral, I can make money from them,
Yeah.
right? I can start a business. There is Markhor Point just outside Chitral. I can set up a little coffee kiosk there, and I'm up and running, right? Soon I will have a chain of coffee kiosks across the road going to Chitral. Right?
Mm.
So think that way. Think nothing is too small, right? And you have to believe in what you're doing. You have to stay with it. It's not an easy journey. There will be a lot of disappointment. There will be a lot of moments of joy also.
Yeah.
When a customer writes you a nice note, right, and says, senpai, because we are going direct to home with education.
Mm.
So when a mother writes a note and says, my daughter hated physics, she would not touch her physics book, she would cry if there was a test. Now she loves physics, right? She's in class 9 physics and she loves it, right? So we love what you've done.
Right.
And that is right, the hours of sweating and thinking and doing and creating. One note from one mother who says, my daughter now loves physics, right, makes
Yeah.
all the difference.
Very well said, sir. I'll just summarize the session with your words. It's entrepreneurship is not only an alternative career path, it is really the only way that will solve Pakistan's big problems at scale. So, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experience with us. We really appreciate that you took time for our session. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
It
you,
was
Renu.
nice talking to you.
Thank you.